Hello. Just gonna change my. Okay, right. Yeah. Oh. How are you guys doing? It's been a while since my last writing stream. Um, when was the last one? I think it was like 2 weeks ago already, wasn't it? Um, yes, 2 weeks. No, yes, yeah, 2 weeks ago. Yeah. Um. So yeah, as the title said, today I'm reading chapter 3, and then I'll also start writing chapter 4. Um, Hmm. so let's get right into it, I guess. Um, right. So, chapter 3, Cross the Sea. In the morning, I was woken up by the noises of Tensor readying herself. When she saw me looking at her, she smiled at me and said, "Morning, how are you feeling?" It was still weird to see her smile so genuinely. Just when I opened my mouth, my stomach made a huge growling sound. Tensor turned her back against me while she leaked a few funny sounds. I could imagine that my face was extremely red at that moment. At the same time, I wondered if that was supposed to be a laugh from Tensor. I guess the sandwiches last night weren't enough, huh? Come on, get up. We'll have breakfast, and I'll show you what I meant last night, she said. Last night, at the end of our conversation, Tensor simply pushed me back to sleep, saying that she would explain her words later the next day. I went back to bed with a puzzled mind, but as an afterthought, I realized that I was actually slightly looking forward to it. Maybe it was Tensor's method of distracting me from my weird dream. I also stood up from my bed to prepare myself. There was a set of shirt and trousers hanging by my closet. Tensor even went out of her way to prepare that for me. I was in awe. Don't forget about your mask, she reminded me. I grabbed the mask on my desk and put it over my eyes. Then I remembered the diamond necklace Tensor gave me, so I grabbed it from my desk surface and hung it around my neck as well. As we were both ready, we went over to the staff common room for breakfast, where the chefs of the palace had prepared simple food for all the staff members. It was a crowded and fairly noisy place, with everyone chattering among themselves joyfully. It did make me wonder whether the servants at my mansion were also enjoying their time. Of course, it was not the most fun to have to work, but at the very least, I wish that it was a decent enough work environment for them. When Tensor and I walked into the room, everyone turned their heads. They all greeted Tensor with respect, as well as welcoming me with curious eyes. We lined up in the queue to fetch our food, and when it was our turn, the person who was distributing the food, which I assume was the head chef, as he was wearing a toque blanche, beamed when he saw us. Hi, Fenty. Ah, Dame Amalie, looking as healthy as usual. Here's your portion. He handed over a tray consisting of a bowl of soup, a bun with butter beside it, as well as some salad on the side plate. Well, on the same plate. He then turned to me. And this is the new college you were talking about. Yes, she's Sally, who is working alongside me. Please also treat her well, Tensor replied. Of course. Here you go, Dame Sally. He then handed me another tray with the same food. I simply nodded to him with small breathy thanks under my lips. We then found some seats. Everyone seems to like you here, I said. The people of the Realm of Radiance are generally pretty optimistic with things. Even if they are just servants, they look to the bright side, being thankful that they're working for the palace. As the personal guard of Princess Alice, they see me as a servant of one of the highest positions, and so they're happy just to get to speak to me. I assume that they'll see you the same way as well, since you're staying by my side. Tensor ripped her bun into two pieces and spread some butter on them. I'm not sure if I can get used to their attention. I spit out some salad. Just treat them with respect, and you'll be fine, Tensor said. After we finished breakfast, it was just about 7 a.m. Tensor then led me to Alice's room, where we would wake her up. I followed her from behind. Um, as we went through the hallway, I looked to the both sides of the hall. which were aligned with flower pots of different size and patterns, resting on quad stands. And there were also empty armor sets of intriguing designs hanging on their stands. There was a set that looked exactly like the ones the guards at the front gate were wearing. Tensor seemed to notice that I was looking around, and she spoke up. The random radiance focuses more on fun than practicality. A lot of the armor here looks like they have excessive designs, like how that one there was covered by a cloak green club's pattern. She pointed at the armor. But of course, they still serve their purposes, so underneath that cloak is actually a thick layer of chainmail armor. You're very knowledgeable with these as well. Have you been working here for a long time? I asked. She waved her hand as she smiled awkwardly. No way, I've only been around here for less than a year. I joined the team right after my graduation under Princess Alice's request. Working here is no easy feat. I had to make sure that I understood all the rules, and of course their costumes in the realm of Radiance. I'm not from around here after all. Eh? Where are you from? I decided to catch up to her and walk with her side by side. The Randall Frost. However, my parents thought that the education over here in the Kingdom of Cards was way better, so they sent me here during secondary school, and that was when I met Princess Alice. I see. Give me a second. Wait, give me a second. Okay. While we were chatting, Tensor stopped in her footsteps. I also did, and we turned to a pair of doors. Well, it's just Princess Alice, but you better act like a proper guard, Tensor whispered. Got it, I replied sternly. She then knocked on the door firmly but softly. Your Royal Highness, this is Amalie with Sally. We're coming in now. And without waiting for a response, she turned the knob and pushed the door gently open. As we walked in, we were immediately facing a king-size bed with two lanterns, one on each side. The foot of the bed also had a rectangular sofa. And then there was Alice. Her limbs all tangled up around her white blanket of golden spades pattern. Gleaming hair was messy as well, spread out on the bed with some strands covering her cheek. She was even nibbling on them, and her whole body was positioned almost completely sideways to her pillows. Her head was on the edge of the bed, ready to fall off. That is Alice? I stood by the doorway, still processing the image in front of me. Of course, I had always known that Alice had a carefree personality, but I would imagine that she would still act like a proper princess, all elegant and classy most of the time. However, yeah, Princess Alice has a really bad sleeping posture. I was surprised by it as well when I first started working. Not very fitting for a princess, I know. Pencil stood by Alice's head as she carefully lifted the sleeping face and then slowly turned her body into the bed for a safer position. Rissa, can you open the curtains for me, please? She asked. Yes, right away. I finally moved from my spot. Alice's bedroom was in a circular shape, with three windows on each side of the bed. They were currently covered by red curtains, and so I slid them open one by one, and gradually more sunlight shone onto Alice's face. Finally, Alice frowned. She gave out a big yawn and stretched her arms out, uh, while letting out a cute mumble. Then she blinked her eyes, seemingly wondering where she was, until her eyelids jumped, which I assumed was when she actually snapped back to reality. She turned to Tensor. Good morning, Amalie. Good morning, Princess Alice. Don't forget that Rissa's here too. Then turned to me. Yes, of course. I forgot for 1 second that I'll be seeing you here now. She jumped up from her bed and pranced at me, hugging me tightly and stroking my hair fiercely. What are you doing, my dear friend? I'm doing fine, Alice. She was leaning over me so much that I was starting to feel my balance coming off, and eventually we both fell onto the carpet floor. Alice's hands were pressing against the floor beside my head. She was looking down at me. We both stared at each other for a moment until she started laughing. Zoe, are you okay? Jeez, you're being so reckless already right after waking up. Tensor hurried to us as she picked up Alice first. I sat up on the floor and Tensor reached out her hand. I held it and got up, thanking her. I'm just really happy to see Rissa right after I wake up. Alice chuckled. She leaned her face forward while squinting her eyes, observing me up and down. Well, too bad you're not wearing a maid uniform. I'm sure you look good in that. She's not your play doll, Tensor protested for me. Alice shrugged as she walked away and sat herself down by the dressing table, staring into the mirror. Tensor sighed as she rolled up her sleeves. She stood beside she stood behind Alice and gently held up her golden hair, glittering under the sunlight. Tensor took out a brush from the drawer and began brushing her hair. Alice closed her eyes while smiling, sitting very still and straight up in her cushioned seat. Um, is there anything I should do? I asked, standing beside them. Nah, just wait till I'm ready. You feel awkward standing there, you can stand outside the room instead, just to keep an eye on the hallway, Alice replied. Uh, I still commanded. I made a slow bow, then I took light steps to reach the door, so as not to break the tranquility in the room. As I gently opened a small gap, just enough for me to slip through, then I made sure to close the door with minimal noises, and just stood there like a statue, facing forward, even if it was only the white marble wall to stare at. I only knew that some guards would do that. I actually did not know if that was how I was supposed to act, especially since I was usually the one with the hair being combed inside the room. There were quite a lot of servants walking by. We greeted each other with simple nods. I tried not to speak too much except for good morning. I did not know how strict the house rules were in the palace of the Kingdom of Hearts. Well, Kingdom of Cards. So I was trying to perform the minimal actions to get by the time. Without a pocket watch on me, I did not know how long it had been. Eventually, Alice walked out in her light blue dress, with her hair beautifully groomed by Tensor. She also had a light makeup on, just enough to cover some tiny dark spots on her face. She was also wearing her usual headband with a huge black spade on her right, and she was also holding a fan of the same color and shape. Hmm. I'd certainly like the both of you to join me for breakfast, but Alice turned to Tensor. I think it's about time you two get ready to set off. It'll be quite a journey to the Ren of Flame. Yes, I'll go get. Your Royal Highness! Your Royal Highness! It is urgent news! Tensor got interrupted by a buccal voice. It was a red penguin in white cape with red horse pattern paddling through the hallway. With his flappy orange feet supporting his round body, he almost tripped over the marble floor. As he reached us, he was panting heavily. What is it? Alex said. We have received news from secret agents that an army has already set off from the Phantasm Arch Kingdom. At this moment, they might have already started treading through the rotting swamp. Penguin exhaled. Rotting swamp? That is near the border ran of flame already. I gasped. Alice nodded. I understand. We will change our plans. You may return to your position now. The penguin made a slight bow to the three of us by leaning forward, as he was too round to actually bend his body. Then he turned around and hastily stepped away through the hall. I watched his back waddling until he disappeared round the corner. Can I drink some water? That's not good. I thought they wouldn't be setting off until like 2 or 3 more days later. Did they catch wind of us spying on them, so they decided to start things off early? Alice was holding her chin while staring at the floor. Then we had to hurry. This way. Pencil pointed down the hallway. We both followed her as we ran through the corridor. Alice was slightly struggling as she was also using both hands to hold up her skirt, so that she would not trip over it. As we ran, other people who saw us immediately gave way to us. We exited the main building, and Tensor brought us to the back of it, into an area of mainly grass patch, though there was a huge shed in the middle of it. I see. Suppose he'll be fast enough. Alice commented. In heavy breaths, maybe. Yeah, in heavy breaths as we stopped by the shed. Both Alice and I were catching our breaths while Tensor moved close to the shed. Its entrance was covered by huge curtains. Tensor lifted up a section of it and peeked in. She seemed to be talking to someone before she pulled her head out and backed off. The ground began to shake. There was a light roar coming from within the shed. The sudden noise was triggering my fight or flight senses. The head first popped out. It was a yellow dragon head wearing a silver helmet with two long yellow antennas over its head, the end of each one shaping like a cross. As it revealed itself even more, I watched its neck extending longer and longer, and then finally its front limbs crawled out, and so were its pair of chitin wings. Its narrow body was shown next, then its hind legs with big tense muscles on the thighs, and finally a waggling tail longer than its body. Besides its helmet, it also had hardened silver stripes all over its body, seemingly to be the rest of its armor. Uh, Give me a second. Someone's messaging me for some very important things. Okay. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. It's just one of my friends is making a bulk order for card from a website, and then he was just informing me that like some of them went out of stock. Mm. Where was I? As it revealed itself even more, I watched its neck extending longer and longer, and then finally its front limbs crawled out, and so were its pair of chitin wings. Its narrow body was shown next, then its hind legs with big tense muscles on the thighs, and finally a wagging tail longer than its body. Besides its helmet, it also had hardened silver stripes all over its body, seemingly to be the rest of its armor. As its whole being was fully out of the shed, it stood up and looked down upon us. I swore in my mind that it might have been around 13 meters tall. It first took a glance at Alex, then it turned its head to me, tilting while most likely wondering who I was. This is Lumile, my pet dragon, Alex explained. Wait, pet dragon? I exclaimed. Alice looked up and stretched out both her arms towards Lumile. Come here, my dear. Lumile lowered his head and began rubbing his cheeks against Alice's palms. Slowly it got closer and began rubbing his snout against Alice's chest. Aw, who's a good boy? Alice aggressively rubbed her hand against Lumile's snout. This continued for a short while before Alice stopped her movements and looked into his eyes. Alright, Lumile, I want you to carry Emily to another place again. Is that okay? Lumiere raised his head and turned to Tensor, who was simply standing there waiting for the cozy moment to be over. Lumiere made a few large steps near Tensor. Each time his giant foot came down, the ground trembled. He then lied down next to Tensor. Tensor gently patted his snout. That means he's ready to set off. Are you? Alice looked at me. Well, I can't really refuse here, can I? I made my way near Lumiere. Lumiere? I actually don't know how to pronounce his name. Lumiere. Once again, he focused on me with curious eyes. He also raised his head slightly, seeming to be alerted. Don't worry, she's our friend, Sally, and she'll come with us, Tensor explained. Lumiere lowered his head to my level and close to my face as well. Then he poked me a few times with his snout. It actually tickled me as I began to chuckle subconsciously. Hey, seems like he likes you, Tensor said. Things will be easy then. She then turned to Alice. Oh, actually, I'll have to ask you first, Princess Alice. Even we're riding on Lumiere, it won't be quick enough to reach the Realm of Flame. Especially if we have to fly along the coast side of the Realm of Radiance and the Realm of Frost. I'd like to ask for permission to fly over the Whirlpool Islands. Upon hearing that, Alice's expression also became serious in an instant. Are you sure there are no alternatives? I'm afraid not. I would have said that we could fly along the coast of the Realm of Gloom, but we don't want our enemies to notice us. Uh, sorry, just uh, um, I'm afraid not. I would have said that we could fly along the coast of the Realm of Gloom, but we don't want our enemies to notice us. Plus, we want to land far away from where the two armies would intersect, so that leaves us the option of the west coast of the Realm of Flame only, our current destination, the Elden Dragon's Jaw, and to reach there, the quickest way will be through the Whirlpool Islands. The two were glaring at each other so intensely that I thought a fight might break out. I was struggling to decide if I wanted to intervene, but before my decision could be made, Alice already continued as she sighed. I don't doubt your decisions, Amalie, but please just make sure you three will come back safely. Of course. Wait a second, I have a bad feeling about this, I added in. I had heard the rumors of the Whirlpool Islands, situated in the south of the Realm of Flame and the north of the Realm of Frost. It was an extremely dangerous area where no ships would dare to approach, nor would any flying objects be safe attempting to soar over the air. I had heard from my father that the existence of that location was the main reason why the Realm of Frost was safe from the attacks from the Realm of Flame, since armies from the Realm of Flame uh, uh, in the past long ago, since armies from the Realm of Flame were not able to cross the sea to reach the Realm of Frost. It was also a main reason why these two realms were the most distinct to each other, as the existence of the Whirlpool Islands prevented an efficient communication between themselves. Alex smiled bitterly. I suppose, now that we come to this, you can decide for yourself if you want to go along with Emily or not. I took a step back as I took a glance at Tensor. Different thoughts in my head were constantly screaming for my attention. I felt very confused. We had to rescue a whole race of people while trying to avoid an army from the Phantasm Archkingdom. And we would also need to fly through the most dangerous place in this world first. There was a lot to take in. Well, I can't blame you for being scared, I guess, Tensor commented as she jumped onto the back of Lumiere. You can stay here then. It'll be much safer for you. Safer for you. As somehow that was a phrase that I felt revolting whenever I heard of it. It was as if I was put in a glass container, never to be touched, because it would be safe for me. However, The worst thought that I had was that people only said that because they were not expecting anything from me. It was not just from Tensor. I heard similar phrases quite a few times from my parents and their acquaintances. The protest will be dangerous. You should stay at home. It's not suitable for your age to learn about swordsmanship yet. You might get hurt. If any strangers talk to you, even if they are just children, avoid them. The flame was ignited inside me. A flame of rage. I felt I had to seek a chance to release it all. And right in front of me, Tensor riding on Lumiere was that chance for me. As per usual, without waiting for my response, Tensor tapped on Lumiere's neck with a hand, and Lumiere began to lift off. The motion pulled me back into reality, and without another thought, I began sprinting towards them. Lumiere was already too high for my arm uh, to reach, but nonetheless, I looked up to them. My legs continued to run across the grass patch. Lumiere was flying higher and higher into the air, and Tensor was simply staring down at me. Are you the same too? The same as those who thought I should simply stay protected? Uh, maybe this would be better, yeah. As I thought of that to myself, I leapt at a hopeless height. A giant ice spike suddenly spawned out from the ground, pushing me up under my feet. I hardly even had the time to scream. As I was pushed higher, Tensor also reached out her arm. I grabbed onto it, and Tensor, with great strength, pulled me onto Lumiere's back. And there I was, sitting in the sky. I looked down to see Alice waving at us with a gentle smile. Tensor made a single wave at Alice. As she warned, hold on tight. I embraced her around her waist before Lumiere literally fired away like an arrow. Within a few minutes, we already saw over the kingdom of cards, and subsequently the realm of radiance, as the ocean came into full view, with the salty air breezing past our faces. Do we really need to be in such a hurry if Lumiere can fly this quickly? I attempted to speak during the flight, but the incoming wind simply continued slapping under my face. The sea is larger than you think. That was Tensor's response, and she even asked Lumiere to speed up even further. Lumiere let out a playful roar while my scream pierced through the air. God knows how long it was before we finally landed on a small island, which was literally just a small pile of sand. It was barely enough for the three of us to stand on. I tried getting off from Lumiere, but my whole body was literally shaking. I could not balance myself as I simply dropped onto the sand with my back. I tried supporting myself with my arms, but they were still trembling from the tense flight. Tensor jumped off from Lumiere as she landed on her feet in the most steady posture possible. That was fun, wasn't it? She chuckled. "Eh, shut up. Where are we now?" I lay down on the sand, face up to the sun, with my eyes closed as I let in deep breath to calm my pounding heart. We just went beyond the borders of both the realm of radiance and the realm of gloom. You remember that we flew past two pieces of land, with the left being a flat land shared by the realm of radiance and the realm of frost, and the right being a mountain range acting as the border of the realm of gloom. I had my eyes closed practically the whole journey, so no, I replied. Are you pouting? That's cute. Be quiet. Alright, take a break for now. We're less than halfway through the flight. I estimate the weather will get worse as we approach the Whirlpool Islands. I'm not going to cast any magic to save some magic. I'm not going to cast any magic to save some energy. So get ready to stay wet. I could hear her dropping her bum beside me. That definitely does not sound fun. I sighed. Hey, it was your choice, so bear with it. Though if I have to say, I'm glad you came along. Finally, I opened my eyes slightly and took a glimpse at Tensor, who was staring at beyond the horizon. Was it you who launched the ice spike from the ground? I asked. Yeah, I was ready for you to chase after us, she said. Wait, how are you even sure that I was going to do that? It's just intuition, I guess. We've all been in moments where we were too afraid to make our leap of faith. Although I knew that you had nothing to lose. So while your intuition was telling you to stay, your mind. Probably here's better say common sense. So while your common sense was telling you to stay, your mind was warning you to not miss the chance of venturing out into the bigger world. Others have mentioned stories of you before, and I've learned that you've been homeschooled for your entire life. Your desire to adventure would be strong. There was a momentary silence as I let her words sink in. Frankly, I had never considered any of her words, but upon the first listen, it felt like she was not wrong either. I was pushed by a sense of rage, which I could not understand, but I was also thinking about what I would see beyond the horizons, which would mean that maybe, just maybe, I was a little bit excited about it. However, I could not admit it, perhaps due to the survivor's guilt. By the way, I spoke up. You said that you were going to tell me what you meant by me being a sorcerer of power. All right, yes, of course. We were going through everything in haste that I forgot. Pencil stood up. She laid her palm on Lumia's side. Then I noticed a faint yellow aura was flowing from Lumia onto Tensor through her arm. In a second, Tensor covered herself in armor of a deep purple shade, with her fingers covered in golden metal claws. Her helmet was also in a little oval shape, with a horn shooting out from the forehead, showing gems of red, purple, green, white, yellow, and blue. Her face was completely covered, but the helmet also included a red fissure in a V shape. It was a set of armor different to the one I saw on the night she rescued me. You see, I had the ability to borrow magical energy from other individuals, she explained while turning to the ocean, which boosts both my physical strength and magic usage greatly. She stomped onto the sand while slightly crouching down, pulling her right hand back. Then, in a flash, she pumped her hand forward, splitting the water surface in front of her in half. Splashes of water continued to rise straight ahead, finally hitting a fishing bird, which immediately demolished feathers, flesh, and bones in a second. I was stunned. However, I can't gather magical energy from the same attribute. I can only borrow magical energy which I don't already possess. My magical base is diamond, and Lumia's is topaz, so he could lend me his energy. Your magical base is amethyst, so your energy would come in handy for me. She walked towards me as she continued. Enough chit chat. It's about time we continue on our way. She reached out her hand to me, then almost immediately she retrieved it and said, Can you get onto Lumia's yourself? The armor on her shattered as she refilled her face again, showing a bittersweet smile. I knew that she was being considerate. It was unfair. She made it look like I was the rude one there. So, if I touch you right now, you will sap away my energy? I asked. No, that can only happen with formal contract, and even after that, you had to be willing to offer your energy for me to take it. I took a glance at Lumiere, who was curiously observing us as he tilted his head. We had learned from books that dragons were very sensitive animals who could sense the emotions of a person. Right from when I first met him up till the moment we were on the deserted island, he was showing no hostility to his Tensor, and he was even willing to lend his power to her, which meant I stood up by myself, brushing off the sand on my bum. I cannot climb onto Lumius by myself. You will have to give me a push. Tensor beamed, which actually surprised me. I should be nervous this whole time as well, because I was acting like I could not sap her. As I asked, Tensor pushed me up onto Lumia, and she herself jumped onto him without any effort needed. With a slight tap on his neck, Lumius once again spread out his wings as we continued soaring into the sky. The sky had been clear blue, with white clouds floating above our heads, and the sun shining through the gaps of the fluffy-looking masses. However, I noticed that as we continued our journey, the air in front of us was becoming damp, with the pure color of the air fading into depressing gray. A raindrop hit my nose. We're getting near the danger zone. Uh, as I said, I had nothing to cover you up with, so best to bury your face into my back. Once again, I could see the energy flowing from Lumia's to Tensor. She brought up her saddle purple armor. In an instant, her body became much wider, blocking a lot of the rain for me. I continued embracing her as I stuck my face close to her armor as I was told. My grip became tighter. Maybe fear had finally occurred to me, knowing that we would be venturing into the most dangerous place in this world. Uh, uh, Maybe I was finally beginning to put my trust in Tensor. The rain was becoming heavier and heavier, developing into a full storm. The water droplets were literally pressing us down. I could feel that we had slowed down. Lumiere was struggling to fly through this weather. My clothes were all soaked, with only the upper part of my face still a bit dry due to me wearing a mask. I began to shiver from the cold temperature. I wanted to complain, but I did not want to act like a spoiled child. I chose this. I had to bear with it. My eyes were shut tight, and I ground my teeth. My hands were freezing, and the white gloves used for servant duties were not able to keep them warm. Thunder struck down right beside us. I shrieked to the deafening explosive noise. Tensor reached behind her with her left arm, as she lightly touched on my arm. The scene was too hectic for any of us to say anything, but I could feel her intention. The waves beneath us shoved against each other, creating momentary tall mountains, almost touching us. But Lumius was doing his best to dodge the winds and waves and the rains, determined to bring us to our destination. The water was looking murky, as if it was contaminated. We could not see what was underneath the ocean at all. The waves continued to quiver violently, as if they were trying to devour us among the crushing sounds. There was not a sign of the storm coming to a halt. In fact, it seemed to become stronger and stronger. I put my head close to Tensel's back, as the raindrops splashing onto my face were starting to sting. The winds were constantly disrupting my eardrums, and occasionally there was thunder also adding to the chaos by roaring above our heads. While I was looking down to the ocean, the surface became darker and darker. My heart skipped a beat, as my mind caught up to realization. But it was too late, as the gaping mouth of a giant lizard shot up from beneath the turbulent water. Its sharp teeth came close, but right before they shut, Lumius flipped over and barely escaped the chomp. However, as he flipped over, I also lost my hold and fell off from Lumia. But Tensor immediately grabbed me by the arm. "Hold on tight!" she shouted while squinting her eyes, as she was trying her best to keep me in sight under the pouring storm, with her other hand holding tight to Lumia's skin. Lumia suddenly dropped now, and at the same time, Tensor swung me upwards. She caught me in her arms, urging me to quickly sit properly. Now I was sitting in front of Tensor. She wrapped her left arm around my waist, and her face leant close to my shoulder. "What was that thing?" I turned my head around, and in an instant I could feel my face going pale as I watched the monster emerging from the ocean surface, showing its long navy blue body with white stripes as it was hovering in the air with its white scaly wings, while flapping its front and back fins. Its tail was so long that it was still dragging along the waves. "Tensor! Tensor! We have to hurry!" That was most likely the first time I screamed so loud in my life. I must have also squeezed out tears, but they mixed in with the rain. Hansel also turned her head. At that point, the monster already had its mouth wide open once again. Shadow was looming over us. She clicked her tongue and tapped on Lumia's neck. Lumia turned to the side and flew us closer to the water. He also greatly decreased his speed, so the monster was then flying over us. At that point, I noticed that the monster was most likely more than double the size of Lumia's. "That's it, Lumia, you know me." Tinsel pulled up her hand and shouted, "Magic! Thunderburst!" A huge stroke of lightning crashed down onto the giant monster. The monster let out a battering groan as its body began wiggling. Even though it was pouring, its body was burned to a crisp by the electrifying thunderstrike, and its wings stopped flapping. And I realized another thing. "Wait, Tensor is going to drop onto us!" I yelled. "Don't worry." Tensor tapped on Lumia's neck, and Lumia swiftly turned to his side. The giant body barely brushed past his legs and dropped into the ocean, with the waves rapidly consuming the entity in seconds. Lumia was not quick enough. We would have been buried by the splashing waves as well. Finally, I began to calm down. But as I took a deep breath, a green tentacle fired out from beneath the sea and tied itself around Lumia's leg. We were gradually being pulled down, while Lumia was mustering all his strength to maintain his flight. Gosh, this area is so troublesome. Yeah. Hansel waved her hand, creating an air slash in a green crescent shape, and cut off the tentacle. "Now fly!" she commanded. Lumius boosted high into the sky. "Keep going forward. It should be in the right direction," she said. Lumius saw through the piercing rain and wind. I turned my head while putting my hand over my face, but I also kept my eyes open slightly to take a glimpse at what was in front of us. Swirling whirlpools gradually came to sight from the intense storm. I could see now why it was impossible for sailors to sail past this area. The thunderstorm and the monsters looming in the sea were already extremely difficult to deal with. But besides all that, there were also the whirlpools spinning extremely close to each other, as if they were trying to compete against and swallow each other. Even though we were in the air, when we were flying over them, I could still feel that they were trying to suck us down. I then noticed something as I pointed forward. Look, Tensor, what is that? Something came to sight. It was in the middle of the sea, completely surrounded by whirlpools at all fronts. It was an island shaped almost like a circular ring, more like a crescent shape, with the water in the middle so dark that it felt like you would be sucked into it. I did not know if murky would even be the right word. The color was simply so dense, as if it was the foil itself. Around the island, giant tugs of different heights were grown from the ground, their curved tips all pointing towards the center of the dark water. Despite the heavy rain and blowing storm, the dark water surface remained unbelievably still, as if there was a barrier over it. The whole island was like the mouth wide open of a giant monster, even bigger than the one that was chasing us. I did not wish to get close to the island, but Pencil said that Lumia had to take a rest, even if we had to stop under the storm. The chase just now had exhausted him a bit too much. So, we landed on the tip of the island, which extended out from the crescent shape. Lumius lowered himself close to the ground, but before his feet could even touch the sand, something pranced onto us from behind one of the giant tusks. I turned away while covering my head, while Tensor jumped off from Lumia's back and threw a punch at the face of the unknown creature. The creature rolled onto the ground, but swiftly got back up, roaring at us. We had a closer look. It was a lion in complete blood-red fur. Beside its normal pair of eyes with no pupils, there were also another pair of eyes in pure blue right above them. Blue veins were streaming out from its face. It spread out its black bat-like wings, and its thick scorpion tail was swaying behind it. Uh, what is that? I murmured. Probably one of the sea monsters. Reminds me of a manticore. Hensor's glare was matching that of the lion-looking creature, fearing that if we even look away for a second, its claw would tear us into pieces. However, Tensor could not even maintain her stance for more than 1 minute, as almost immediately something else emerged from the sea behind us. The water fell off, revealing a blue dragon with shiny scales and wings and expanding like a cape. Just as we turned our head, the lion-looking creature took its chance and charged at us. Lumia let out a roar to warn us. Tensor shoved me towards Lumia's chest as he bent down and, and wrapped his body around me. Then in quick succession, she chanted a spell, Magic Dream Weapon. A long piece of white cloth spawned in her hand. She swung it at the lion-looking creature, which then automatically tied itself around the beast. Tensor then grabbed hold of the cloth with both hands and mustering all his strength to spin around and fling the beast at the face of the dragon. The two collided and crashed into the water surface. However, there was no time to rest. As another creature floated out from the sea, it had a giant blue orb in the middle, with the remainder of its body spreading around it in a brown, gory blob, with mouths of degraded teeth spawning out from this large lump of plushing flesh. White tentacles wiggled out from the packed holes of the flesh. I turned towards Lumia as I almost threw up from the sight. When I heard someone, or something, making sounds of bubbling water. I could peek while still in an embrace with Lumia. There were fishes beginning to walk onto the land on two legs. Their fins had hands and fingers which they used to hold their tridents. Not so far behind them, a shell of spiky scales arose, slowly showing a long neck connecting to a disfigured turtle head with red eyes and sharp teeth. All these horrifying creatures were creeping onto us. Even Tensor was pushed back as she began to step backwards towards Lumia and me. As she approached us, she said, Listen, you two, I'm about to cast a spell which will affect you two as well. Please do your best to stay awake, because I'll need to borrow your energy next. I was a little bit confused with what she was saying, but almost immediately understood what she meant, as she stretched her hand forward and shouted, Oh, my ass. Magic ellipsis! A visible wind of rainbow color began expanding from her hand, and when it went over Lumia and me, there was a sudden urge of sleepiness hitting my head like a hammer. I leaned myself onto Lumia's resting arms, while Lumia himself was also doing his best to keep his head lifted. I looked up with my heavy head and realized that all of the other creatures that were about to attack us all either fell onto the ground or sank into the sea. While I was still making sense of what was going on, Tensor put out her other hand towards me while she was still looking ahead. I don't know if you're willing to help me out yet, but I need to ask for assistance if we all want to get out here. Man, the cold weather is really making my throat dry. I glanced at her serious expression and then shifted the little focus I had towards her palm. I could not think. I did not want to think. Maybe that was part of the trick, but it was also true that we were in an extremely dangerous situation right now. I gradually lifted up my arm, straightening all my muscles as my fingers were yearning to touch her hand. I managed to make a small poke at the skin, which she interpreted as a sign for me. She grabbed a hold of my hand tightly. Thank you, she muttered. Then I shall begin. Heavenly Sky, bless us with your power. Demon within me awakens at 0 hour. King of all will also cower. 6 elements unite for me. Heaven above gives you the key. Rush through me with your energy. It was a long chant, far longer than any spell I had known. Most likely that was not even a spell, but something else. As if a switch was flicked, the magical energy within me began to rush down like a flood, all focused onto my arm that was connecting with Tensor. It was a fuzzy feeling. My body was heated up like I had been working out. Tensor's body began glowing in white, purple, and yellow. Her purple armor shattered, but within it was another set of armor, this time with a black base, each armor piece defined with golden outlines. Her helmet also grew out a horn on each side. However, the most distinctive feature was definitely the huge purple U-shaped crest with golden borders floating behind her back. Tensor let go of my hand. She stretched out her arms as her voice, much deeper than before, echoed underneath her helmet. 6 Heaven Rush! Type Original! Another gust of wind exploded around her, spreading out into the distance. There were creatures attempting to get back up onto their feet, but when the wind touched them, they immediately fell back down as if they lost all their strength. Finally, a moment for me to take a breath, Tensor said. I have to apologize for making you two suffer, but all will end now. She pointed to the sky, chanting in the coldest tone I had ever heard from her. Magic, the final light. A spot of red light spawned at the tip of her finger, gradually becoming larger and larger as it seemed to be gathering energy. And then finally, in a second, it shrunk into a dot, then exploded into thousands of crimson rays, shooting through the body of every strange creature around us. They were launched far into the air when hit, some dropping into the sea and some simply never to be seen again. I watched as Tensor let out a sigh of relief. She turned to us and said, They shouldn't be disturbing us for a while now. Let's take a break and we'll set off again. Hearing her saying that, my whole body relaxed out of my control as I slid down along Lumia's arm onto the sand. Tensor rushed to me and carefully lifted up my back. Are you okay? Yes, just feeling tired and everything, I suppose. I could barely make out my words. I still felt really sleepy, and my magical energy was sucked out by Tensor. My thoughts lingered on the memories of all the beds I had slept in. However, the noisy storm and prickling rain were keeping my sensations awake. Tensor attempted to hold me close to her chest, but something else was happening. As the middle of the island was becoming restless, water began to bubble and waves began to form, about to splash onto us, but Lumia bent down and blocked the waves for us. Thank you, Lumia. I'll have a look at what's going on. You take care of Sally. Tensor laid me by Lumia's stomach as he walked towards the dark water. In the middle of the foil-looking water, a round head emerged. The skin was disgustingly smooth, with blue veins growing around its glowing, fierce blue eyes. 2 layers of skin under its chin spread out as it breathed. It had no lips, so its rows of sharp white teeth were completely visible even when its mouth was closed. Then another head of the same aspect also rose up from the water, then another one, and then another one, each head extending longer and longer into the air with a slimy neck. Finally, we could see the part that connected all the heads, a skinny torso like it was drained of nutrients, with its ribcage and lumps of muscle clearly shaped under the skin. With 2 muscular arms crossed over in front of its chest. Despite its bizarre appearance, I could sense that it was different to the other sea monsters that we had seen so far. And then it spoke in a bellowing voice, breaking through even the sounds of the thunderous storm and the metrical rain and the splashing waves. Who is Art Flea? At that moment, my confusion began to rise among my snippiness. It was speaking in our language, yet its speech was also structured dissimilarly to what I knew. However, Tenso seemed to understand it perfectly fine, as she responded, "How rude, should you not introduce yourself first?" The sea creature paused the conversation for a brief moment, but then it continued. "I am Hydra, the Emperor of the Aberrations. Who is Art Flea, and what is thy purpose here in mine own territory?" "I see," Tensor pointed at herself with a thumb. Um, mm, Her helmet shattered, showing her face. "I am Amelie Tensor, the personal guard of Princess Alice from the Kingdom of Cards, and I am on my way to the Realm of Flame with my companions. We're simply passing through here because it is a shortcut. I do apologize if we have disturbed you, but we will have no means to remain in this area or any longer. I would appreciate it if you would kindly let us leave." The center head of Hydra leaned forward close to Tensor, with two of his other heads leaned towards Lumia and me. Compared to Tensor, it was so huge that a single head could easily chomp her down with an exaggeratedly wide mouth. However, Tensor was unfazed. She brought out an item shaped like a black spade, with yellow gem shining in the middle. "This is the crest of the royal family in the Kingdom of Cards. I hope that is enough to validate our identity." Hydra was staring intensely at the crest. Shortly after, he straightened his back, retrieving his hands from us. "And wherefore art thee in such a here to the realm of flame? Yond flee with risk of sowing through the storm and the whirlpools. A war is about to happen, and there are people waiting to be saved. We do not want to waste our time. Traveling through the Whirlpool Islands is much quicker than going around it," Tensor responded. Lumia also lifted up his head and offered a gentle howl. Hydra took notice of that. His head remained still before he said, "Thou art the first people to enter mine own territory unscathed. For this I hast to commend thee. I shall seize the storm and order mine own followers to not attack thee. Thee hast until sunset to leave, so mine own followers attempted to engulf thee once again." After his short speech, Hydra gently sank back down into the water. His movement was so smooth that the water level barely rose, with only thin waves washing ashore, kissing Tensor's feet. As he had promised, I could feel the rain become less heavy, with uh, beams of sunlight casting down the sky between the thick grey clouds. The water also became stiller, albeit the whirlpools remained. After Hydra was certain to be gone, Tensor turned to us as she walked back to us. Her armor shattered into pieces. Uh, Her remaining armor. And at that moment, I could feel some of my energy coming back. However, my fatigue was not completely gone, and I had to continue lying against Lumia's stomach. Tensor kneeled down in front of me and tapped my shoulder. "Come on, there isn't much time before sunset. You can lean onto me for a quick nap while we fly, so muster your strength. Get up." Tensor lifted me up by wrapping my arm around her shoulder. Lumia also lay down as flat as possible, so as to make it easy for me to climb onto his back. Tensor lifted me up a little bit by holding my waist. I pulled up both my arms, attempting to grab onto his smooth skin. I was complaining in my head why it did not have any scales despite being a dragon. Seeing that I was still struggling, Tensor blurted out, "Excuse me." Then she put her hand under my bum and with a light squeeze pushed me right up to the top. My mind awoke for 1 second there, surprised by her unexpected movement. Seeing that I had sat down properly, Tensor jumped up and landed behind me. She gently held my shoulders from behind. "You can lean on me during our journey. Rest your head on my chest." Hearing that I could finally sleep, my consciousness immediately turned itself off as I put my head just between her neck and her shoulder. It was her again. I was sitting down in complete darkness, with her standing in front of me, her expression still unknown to me. A red orb was placed down between us. She simply pointed at it and muttered, "Take this." Why? I frowned as I retaliated. Just do it. Not until you tell me your reason. She suddenly grabbed onto my shoulders, her fingernails digging into my skin. For once, she looked into my eyes and I finally saw it. She was indeed me, but there was despair in her pupils. Her skin was almost rotten black, and unlike my teeth, her teeth were fierce and sharp, like she was a wild animal. Take it! I jerked up from a lying position, panting heavily as cold sweats were dripping onto my knees. I pressed my shaking palm against my forehead as my ears were ringing. I just woke up, yet my sight was almost blind. Everything appeared to be blurry to me. I could not focus, only able to make out rough shapes. I closed my eyes and took a deep breath. After a minute or so, I opened my eyes back up, and finally it seemed that I had calmed down a bit. I looked around my surroundings. I was sitting inside a white tent, with light flashing outside, showcasing shadows of busy people running around. Beside me were my folded clothes, with the diamond necklace Tensor gave me on top, as well as the mask. I looked down and realized I was in thin white vest and shorts, covered by a thin woolen blanket. I was sitting on a mat made of straw. While I was still idling, a hand appeared through an opening gap in front of me. "Sally, are you awake? May I come in?" It was Tensor. Yes, go ahead," I replied. She then made the gap wider, peeking in while bending down. She swiftly crouched in and closed the opening, and she crossed her legs while sitting down. She was also maintaining as much distance from me as possible, despite both of us being cramped in the small tent. Damn, I already left a gap open, but it still feels suffocating in here. Tensor fanned herself with her hand. "How are you feeling?" I looked down. "Nothing too special, I suppose. Just fine." "That's good enough. You feeling more awake now?" "Yes. Where are we?" I asked. "Outside of the Elden Dragon's jaw. We're now at the temporary base of Alice's army in the Realm of Flame. It's nighttime right now." "I see. What is the plan?" "The army has already gathered most of the Dragonoid villages around this area. However, there are still a few more tribes settled near the foot of the Red Volcano that we had to retrieve. It'll be a bit of a trek, but if we set out in the morning, we should arrive at that place by noon. Then we take them back to the base, uh, rest for the night, and then we set sail to Renfrost the day after." "Alright, that sounds... Achoo!" I sneezed, and I sneezed a few more times. Tensor was observing me in worry. "Why are you staring at someone sneezing?" I murmured in complaint. Sorry, it's just that I noticed you were sweating a lot. Do you have a bad dream again?" "Yes, I believe so." I wanted to tell her about everything again, but now that we were away from the Kingdom of Gods, low on security and stability, I felt that my story would simply give her more burden. "I see. Well, tell me more about that later. For now, would you like to wash yourself first? We're flying under the storm. It won't be good if you catch a cold now." "Alright." After giving me the necessary items, Tensor guided me to the nearest pond. There was a path that I would have to go through before reaching the pond. Tensor suggested that she would stay at the base while I would wash myself, so she simply stood by my tent while seeing me off. It came out a little it came off a little weird for me. Tensor had been so protective around me so far. I was sure that she would walk me to the pond. When I arrived at the pond, there were already a few other women there, just sitting in the steaming water while chatting amongst themselves. Frankly, I was surprised by the fact that there was even a natural pond in the Realm of Flame. But then my logical side slapped me on the face and told me that the land probably would have been unsuitable to live in if it was hot enough to dry out everything. I took up my thin clothes, but then I simply stood by the side and stared at the water. It looked extremely hot. I took a glimpse at the other people. Some of them looked humanoid like me, but then there were some who also had a lizard head, and some were a mix of both, such as having the face of a human but with two horns on their head. Besides, I also felt a bit embarrassed to be sitting down in the same body of water with other people naked. I heard that it was a culture in some areas, but certainly not so in the Ren of Bloom. Either way, I first pulled out one leg, carefully placing it down near the water surface, so that my toe would touch the water first. It was hot, but not as searing as I thought. Gradually, I put my whole leg in, and then I bent down, with my stomach now touching the water, and then finally covering the lower half of my breast. And then I could finally let out the deep breath that I had been holding in. Though immediately I gasped as someone literally ran past me and jumped into the water with a woohoo mixing in with the loud splash in the middle of the pond. Everyone else also turned their heads to the scene. The water was bubbling, and her head popped out. Her face was definitely human. She had red hair, with a horn extending out from underneath the red layer on each side of her head. Her ears were also fairly distinctive as well, as while they were human ears, the edges also looked spiky like fins. As she laughed, I could see that while she had human teeth, there were two teeth that were especially long and sharp at the top part, on the top part of her jaw. Noticing that it was just a playful kid, the others returned to their own conversations. The red-haired child noticed that I was alone, and then began to swim to me. Her greeting was as follows. Ah, you're the sleepy girl. Sleepy girl? I almost exclaimed, but refrained from being too noisy. The child had already attracted enough attention. Yeah, dragon came down. You're sleeping on it. And strong girl carry you. Ah, she must have seen Tensor arrive with Lumia while carrying me. Frankly, I was not good at dealing with children, so I was worried that I might be acting weird, but nonetheless, I would not act unkind to her, so I tried continuing the conversation. Yes, I was tired from a long journey, so I was taking a nap. So, is it fun? She asked excitedly, waving her arms. What was? Riding dragon! I thought back to how I almost flew out from Lumia's high speed, and we had to fly through the storm as well, while escaping from giant sea monsters. If I had to be honest, it was not fun. It was alright. Have you rode on a dragon before? No, dragons are scary here. Madam told me no go near. Seeing that our conversation was continuing, the child invited herself to sit down beside me. She was a hair shorter than me, so she had to tilt her head and look up to me while we were talking. Innocence was screaming all over her face. Thinking about the situation happening in the Ren of Flame, I felt bad that she had to live under such an environment. Some of the main instigators of the unrest were the Star Dragons, a proud race of talking dragons who would not let go of their high position. So I could see why this girl was told to stay away from dragons. I see. Are you here with your madam? I asked. It was strange for a little girl like her to be around by herself, uh, even if the base was supposed to be a safe area. She shook her head. No, me here with my friends. Me on mission. Tomorrow me return to madam. I see. She was really petite, so I guess that she was no more than 9 years old. She was relatively skinny, but I noticed that she did have some muscles on her arms, and her shoulder blades were not apparent, meaning that she was well fed. Me Nuri. You? He said. Uh, I'm Sally. Nice to meet you. Nice to meet you too. She beamed with a pure smile. Then she climbed out of the water with her small body. I put my hand up ready to give her a lift if she needed to, but she managed it herself. Water too hot. Me enough. Bye, sleepy girl. When Nuri got out of the water, I noticed that she had a really short, scaly tail that was barely noticeable. Wiggling like an excited puppy, she hastily wrapped herself around with a towel, but she had to grab onto it because it was so loose that it would just fall off. And then she ran off. I did not even have the time to ask her not to call me Sleepy Girl. After a few more minutes, as I rubbed my body and washed my face, I also returned to the base, feeling more refreshed than ever. Tenso was sitting on a small crate by my tent, with bowls of food in her hands. Just in time, here's dinner. She put out one of the bowls. Thank you. I took it over. Tenso pulled over another crate and just to me to sit down. How was the washing? It was good. I met a funny child. She was so eager to talk to me, calling me sleepy girl. Most likely because she saw me sleeping on Lumia. Ah, you must be talking about Nuri. She came charging at me right after I got off Lumia. She was so excited to check out Lumia. She said it was rare to see people riding on dragons. And so she believes Lumia must be a kind dragon. So you did meet her as well. Hansel winked. And she'll be joining us tomorrow to lead us. She's not from around here, but rather one of the villages near the Red Volcano. She was here on an errand to carry supplies back to the orphanage she lives in. Orphanage? So when she was talking about Madam, she must have mentioned the director of the orphanage. I looked down to my food. So her family is gone. There are a lot of orphanages around here. Children have lost all their families from various circumstances, with how many wars are going on and the dangerous nature of the red flame. Looking on the bright side, at the very least, the people have the heart to accept these lost children and look after them, Pencil said. That is fair. I look up to the starry sky. Even for a hostile place like the Ren of Flame, beautiful things still existed. Our conversation had reminded me of my lost family members once again. I could only hope that they were still alive out there somewhere. It was astonishing how 2 days ago I was still sitting in my room in the Ren of Gloom, and now I was in a military camp thousands of miles away. Of course, I would have been totally fine just staying in the mansion, but at the same time, it felt nice to venture out and encounter the unknown. Then, thoughts came out of my head. Maybe my family is better off dead. I dropped my food. And that is chapter 3. I'm pretty proud of this one. I think I wrote this one pretty well, actually. Let me let me know what you guys think. Uh, let me eat some biscuits. I don't know why I just feel so tired recently. I think it's because I've been interacting with people for too much. So I probably need to give myself like a 1 day break or something like that. Right, let me open chapter 4 then. Hmm. Gonna take a quick break. Yeah, I'm just gonna take a quick break. Man, I just feel I want to sleep. Ah, ah. My mind is going blank. we don't like feel typing reasoning. Okay, let's continue. Yeah. Hmm. 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 Ah. Mm. 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 Ah. Ugh. Thinking. Hmm. Mm, Fair enough. Yeah, I'll go with that. Yeah, I didn't know you were actually looking the whole way through. Damn. 3. What do you call? It's not called fin, is it? Mm, I think I'll just stop here. Reading the whole chapter 3 and writing 2 pages as well. S- I think that's some good progress. Oh hi, you know, clocking in. I like how you clock in right when I want to end it. We can go back to do some saga testing. So let's see. Tomorrow I have Pokemon locals. Wednesday I have Pokemon locals. Thursday I will have to sleep early because my flight to Germany will be on Friday. So that would means that yeah, well yeah, what was I going to say? I mean if it's not obvious enough to you, I'm basically going to the Grand Tour Battlesphere Saga this weekend in Germany. Um so so basically this whole week probably I won't have another stream. And next week I will still be in Germany. And like even though I have free time, I'll probably be traveling around doing other stuff as well. So probably and then right after I come back, I will have to start my job. So I actually don't know. Um like maybe on the 11th of November will be my next stream, but like it'll be like much later. It'll be like more like a midnight stream probably. Um because my job right now requires me to work until 8 p.m., which you know is usually the time I start my streams, any stream really. So yeah, probably like after this one, I have to change my time, or just like become unstable. Yeah, I will have to change my time. Uh, well, yeah. So let's say 11th of November. Maybe like 10 p.m., 11 p.m. I don't know. We'll see how that goes. But it'll be a while. So I know not a lot of people are watching my live, so like for those who are watching what do you call it, the fort, I hope you enjoyed me reading through chapter 3. It's starting to get to the point where like I don't like kind of my ideas start to fickle a little bit. Like, you know, it's kind of like I know the general direction, but like I can't I'm starting to lack the details of like what I should fill in and everything like that. So, well, probably need some time to think, but I think so far it's going all right. So we'll see how that goes. But yeah, either way, I'll see you guys probably 2 weeks later. Thanks for coming. Bye bye.